Welcome to the Elliott Alert. My guest today is Mr. Maurice Taggart. He's the trial coordinator for the Office of the City Attorney. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Mr. Elliott.
Now, Mr. Taggart, I've been knowing you for a while, and I know that you're a resident of Pine Bluff, and you grew up in Pine Bluff. Can you tell people a little bit about yourself before we ask about the City Attorney's Office?
Absolutely. So, as you indicated, I am a Pine Bluff resident, born and raised here, raised my family here. I briefly left to attend undergrad in Fayetteville.
Right.
Came back. I'm always a Pine Bluff boy. Like I said, I was born and raised here. Ended up going to law school at Bowen in Little Rock. And so now I am working over at the City Attorney's Office as trial coordinator. The great thing about that is, and one of the reasons why I came back to Pine Bluff, is because I hadn't always worn a suit.
Right.
And so
exactly.
I'm in one of those positions where
Right.
I'm very uniquely qualified to do the job that I do, and it's just a great opportunity for me to be able to give back to Pine Bluff and Jefferson County, a area that has done so much for me.
Now, also, as you're saying that, I want you to make sure that you give a shout out to your wife and your kids, because you have a family here who are very connected in Jefferson County. So what's your wife's name?
So my wife is, well, first of all, let me say our elected city attorney is Miss Althea Scott. So
Right.
I work under her leadership. My wife, we'll be celebrating 16 years.
Outstanding.
Next month, so we're excited about it. We're going to take a little trip, and so she is the elected county clerk. So we're very, very happy for that. Very happy to the citizens of Jefferson County, and I have some lovely children too.
Right.
They make me proud. So that's kind of a gist of the family life. Love family. We were talking the other day about what Christmas means to us.
Yes.
And the most important thing I must say is family and
Right.
the ability to be able to come together as one. We volunteered at a local, I guess essentially it's a soup kitchen. I took my daughter out. We try to do that every year,
Right.
and instill in our children. My wife and I have made a commitment to do that, instill in our children the importance of giving back, because
Right.
everyone doesn't have the opportunity to have food during Thanksgiving, and so that's great. You know, it's to he who much is given, much is required.
Exactly.
I take that very, very seriously.
And also, you went to high school here in Pine Bluff?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
So
1998 Zebra. So we will be going to, my daughter and I, we're going to the championship game this weekend.
Okay.
We bought our tickets yesterday. We're so excited about that. And,
Okay.
and Coach Bolin and his staff have done a great job. We're excited about that.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to make sure that we got out who you were and where you were. And now we can talk a little bit, and we can talk more about the Office of City Attorney. Tell me, what, as you were going through your high school and your college years, what fascinated you about law?
Well, I had some experiences as a juvenile that I was able to experience the law from the other side.
Right.
And so I met someone who really gave me a better vision of the law and the importance of, and how it can affect people's lives.
Right.
And so, and I always enjoyed being able to go out and help folks. And I said, what can I do? What career chores, as they say, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day.
You'll never work a day in your life.
And so, what could I do to give back to folks who came from a similar socioeconomical background as I had? And the law was the way. And so a lot of times people don't understand how some of the decisions that are made legally can have a long-lasting effect, not only on the community, but also on the families that are affected as it relates to it. And so that was I always had a dream to do. I remember when my son was born, he would look up at his name is Justice, he would look up at some of the buildings we would go to in Little Rock, the Justice Center, and he'd say, well, Daddy, that's my name. And so I always had that burning desire to serve always, and I think the law is a great way to do that.
Mm-hmm. And also, our kids and a lot of people in our community don't really understand the law. And one of the things that I do, and you've been a part of it, is I do something called a rap session where I bring people in, law enforcement, attorneys, judges as well, juvenile court members, and we discuss the law and some of the things that kids do that can get themselves, as we say, you kind of messed off in the process. Mm-hmm. So like you, there's always been a burning desire in my heart to make sure that our kids understand what their rights are.
Absolutely.
And they should also have mentors and people that they can look up to who can help them maneuver around, and I don't want to say maneuver around, but I teach them the right way to do things.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Now, from the city's attorney's office, I know you come in contact with a lot of different situations. And again, before we go on, I just want to, now who is our city attorney? I want to give her some props.
Our city attorney is Althea Haddon Scott. She is the elected city attorney.
Mm-hmm. And she's been in the community for a while.
Absolutely. She's served ever since, well, in the city attorney's office since 2009, so we're very happy to have her there. But, you know. And
before then, she was in private practice, too, in the community for a long time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, we're going to go on break, but when we come back from break, we're going to talk more about the city attorney's office and exactly what does a trial coordinator do. We'll be right back.
I rescued Toast from a shelter in 2011. I love Toast because she's a lazy diva. Toast does whatever she wants, obviously. She's sleeping right now. She's an epic snuggler. She's so comforting. She's so loving. Toast makes me laugh. When I walked into the shelter, I knew right then that she was special.
Todd's a great guy. I mean, look at him. What a sweetheart. Attaboy. Wait, Todd, what are you doing? How totally selfish and un-Todd-like of you. Come on, Todd. Come on, man.
Welcome back to the Elliott Alert. My guest today is Mr. Maurice Taggart, the trial coordinator for the Office of the City Attorney of Pine Bluff, Arkansas.
Absolutely.
Now, Maurice, when we left the first segment, we were talking about the city attorney's office, and tell me, the city attorney's office, what general role in government does the criminal justice system?
Well, the city attorney's office has a dual role. Mm-hmm. One, we advise the city council and or departments on legal issues, so to ensure that make sure an ordinance is sufficient, making sure that the department heads are doing things according to the law. That's the first thing. Mm-hmm. Second thing is we represent the city's interests in district court, Division 2. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean? That means any misdemeanors that happen within, or violation of ordinances, city ordinances, that happen within the city of Pine Bluff, we prosecute those cases. And so small staff, but we are always working. I tell you, we stay busy. One additional thing that we do is accept criminal complaints from the public. So we assess those. A lot of times people think that, well, I want to file charges. Well, You don't make that decision.
Right.
You file the complaint,
Right.
and then our office ascertain whether it meets the requirements or meets the elements of some specific crime.
Right.
And then we proceed from there.
So that means if I'm in Pine Bluff and my neighbor throws an apple from his side and hits my son or something like that, instead of me going over there, you know, picking up an apple and hitting him, I can go to the city's attorney's office and say, hey, do I have a case? Can I file a complaint because he threw an apple and hit my son? And is the trial coordinator the person that I would give that information to?
Yes, generally you'll come in, and let me say, what you just described could be both civilly or criminally.
Right.
But that's one of the things that we do, and normally it's myself. We intake those cases, and then we evaluate them and make an assessment based on the law and determine whether some type of criminal act has been committed.
Right.
Not to get into legal jargon, but probable cause. We determine whether there's probable cause to warrant a charge against whomever this alleged defendant is.
Now you know, for our viewers, you're going to have to explain what probable cause is, because some of them may not know what probable cause is, or reasonable suspicion.
Okay. So, very simply, probable cause is it's a legal term, but we look at it and say, well, is there enough evidence, normally it's prima facie, to warrant that a crime may have been committed in this situation?
Right.
Essentially, that's what it breaks down to. It requires, I mean, there's a legal standard, and then there's some of it is common sense too.
Right.
So that's kind of where we are in that regard.
Because a lot of times people may not understand what their rights are, or sometimes they think that if something happens, they should take the law within their own hands and say, okay, well, you know, I won't get in trouble because this person slapped me and I went over there and bust their windows. Or, you know, sometimes we may have young kids who do things and say, okay, that's my boyfriend. I caught him or her cheating, or girlfriend. I'm going to go key their car up, and I'm justifiable. I don't get in trouble.
That is by far the worst thing to do.
Right.
What you don't want to do. That's what the system is for. The criminal justice system is set up such that we don't have that.
Right.
If we allowed everyone to just take things into their own hands, it would be total chaos.
Right.
There's no way we can have a functional society where everyone, kind of like the movie, I think it's The Purge, where people just, for a certain amount of time, they just go out and do what they want to do. No, that's not. A civilized society cannot function effectively like that. So that's what we're there for. You know, come in, and if it's something that falls within our jurisdiction, then we'll deal with it. Otherwise, you know, we may suggest going some other place. So it's and you talked about slapping the boyfriend and girlfriend, and we'll talk about that later on in the segment. There's some domestic violence, and domestic battery is a big thing.
Right.
And sometimes people don't understand. You know, they say, well, you know, just because I saw him do this, there weren't any injuries. That's not how the law works.
Right.
So
exactly, and I think we can talk a little bit about it now, because those are some of the things that I see young kids get in trouble with at an early age, and it affects them later on in their lives. And you'll say, okay, well, it was just a harmless fight, you know, but if you're a female and you scratch them and there's some visible injuries, you can be charged with domestic battery.
Absolutely.
Which means if you're convicted in it, you may not be able to go into various areas in law enforcement or have different jobs.
Absolutely. This is a major thing, and let me tell you, depending on the extent or the facts, every situation is all fact-based.
Right.
And so there's no catch-all. Everything is assessed based on the given facts. And so you're absolutely right. If you put yourself in those situations, I tell young folk, I remember you having with the rap session that you have over at, I think it was over at Dalloway. I always say, if you put yourself in that situation, I mean, whether it's nursing, some of these jobs, that's an impediment.
Right.
And you will just automatically, if there's some history there, especially domestic in nature, domestic violence in nature, you will be told absolutely from the jump they will disqualify you. So it's so important. Protect yourself, protect your name. You let police officers, sheriff deputies, folks do their job. It's not for you to do, because I've had, and I'll be honest with you, I've had folks come in and say, well, I'm in nursing school and I did this. That is not allowed. I do understand you have to think before you make those major decisions, because I promise you, some of the decisions that you make early on, in the heat of the moment, could pose a problem later on. And so we always tell folks, don't take matters into your own hands. That's because if you do, what you said is you've consciously accepted whatever happens afterwards, whether it's charges or whatever, you've accepted that. And so it's very important that we do that. We have to be very, and here's the deal. Back, talking to some of my older uncles, you didn't see a lot of this happening with women committing these acts. I'll tell you, it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. As my mama said, keep your hands to yourself.
Well, we got to go on break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about a little bit more with the attorney's office. We'll be right back.
Okay.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay, so who's gonna do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Welcome back to the Elliott Alert. My guest today is Mr. Maurice Taggart, the trial coordinator for the City of Pine Bluff City Attorney's Office. Mr. Taggart, when we left, we were talking about domestic violence and how it affects our young kids and stuff like that. And I'm glad you actually went into that, because those are some of the things that our kids do at an early age.
Absolutely.
And then when they actually get older, and they graduate, they find that, this misdemeanor thing that I did because me and my boyfriend or girlfriend got into it, now it's affecting my life. So I'm glad that you covered that. But I wanted to ask you, what role is city attorney versus elected district prosecutor? What's the roles?
So, as I stated earlier, during our earlier segment, the city attorney's office for the city of Pine Bluff handles violations of misdemeanors. Now, we're talking from a criminal justice standpoint. handle misdemeanors, violation of ordinances that happen within the confines of the city of Pine Bluff. So, and those are in district court. That's Judge Kearney, Judge John Kearney. Now, the elected prosecutor, Mr. Kyle Hunter, over at the county courthouse, he handles the felonies. His office handles the felonies and some of the citations that are written in the county, or depending on the agency that writes the citation. That's a misdemeanor. He also handles in Lincoln and Jefferson County. He handles the felonies with regard to that. So we have a small piece of the pie. You have your city attorneys in all the respective cities, towns around. So it's we have a small piece of the pie.
Well, I wouldn't call Pine Bluff a small piece of the pie, because then you have smaller areas like All-Time or Wabaseka and stuff like that. And Pine Bluff is way bigger than that. So
I agree.
I know that your caseload, you see a whole lot more in reference to Pine Bluff. But those things are really good to know, and it's educational to let our kids know that, you know, even though they're two separate entities, how and who you should go to for those various informations. Now, tell me, what is your role as a trial coordinator?
So, as I indicated earlier, I deal with the citizen complaints when you're having an issue with someone that could potentially be criminal in nature. At a misdemeanor level, you come into our office, and by the way, we're not an investigative agency. You bring the evidence to us, we follow it. If it leads back to you, then you got a problem. But we assess that, you bring all the information in and make that assessment. Second thing is trial prep. So I would make sure the subpoenas are out, the witnesses are in place. You know, I'm pretty much a liaison between the courts, the witnesses, and the officers of whatever respective agency that's dealing with the specific charge.
So if someone has committed some form of a battery, came over to your house and jumped on you and your family or something like that, you don't have to say, well, you know, nobody's going to help me, I'm finna go take matters in my hand. Well, you have, if you got video of the situation, if you have scars, you can take pictures. If you have medical records, you can bring them to you and say, oh, now this is what he or she has done to me, and I want justice done. So then they take it to you, you follow up to see exactly who it is, and then after that, do you give that information to the police so that they can file charges?
Well, one of the things people have to understand is, even though it may be morally wrong, that doesn't mean that it's criminally wrong. So there may be someone may be displaying conduct that that we perceive as egregious. However,
and you don't have to explain egregious.
It may be bad. It may be bad to us. But that doesn't mean it rises to the level of a criminal offense. And that's so important. And the other thing is, with all due respect, and I tell this to the complainants that come in, with all due respect, sometimes they assume that I'm the bad guy. I said, well, you would rather make the mistake here versus making it before the judge. And just because you're saying it, not that I don't believe you, but we trust and verify. So you have to be able to substantiate any kind of allegations that you are alleging against someone. I mean, as I said earlier, that's why the system is in place. We can't just let folks come in and say, hey, well, Mr. Elliott slapped me. Well, do you have any witnesses? Are there any? Can you give me something more than that? I need some substance to it. And so that's a lot of times, you know, it's I always try to look at I don't use those legal terms with complainants that come in. Try to be very, I need them to put it in I put it in layman terms so they can understand how the whole process works. And my whole goal is, once you leave there, you may not get the answer that you want,
but you're going to get the right.
You understand, and you get. I've at least given you perspective on where I'm looking, what I'm looking for through my lens.
Right.
Absolutely.
And see, which is a good thing, because then you can tell them if it's a criminal offense or if they can pursue it civilly.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people get those things kind of misconstrued because a person has done something, you assume that it's criminal and it may be civil.
Yeah.
And instead
Absolutely.
of you trying to bring charges to them, there may be another direction where you could either get your money or get reimbursed for some of the things that you've lost or something like that.
Yeah, and we don't give legal advice as it relates to that. If it looks like that something may be civil, essentially what I say is, this looks civil, you may want to contact an attorney. We don't go into the specifics of it, because I guarantee you the first thing they'll say is, Mr. Taggart told me. And no, I don't, as my grandmother would say, do things decent and in order.
Right.
And I try to live by that. So,
well, we're coming to the closing of our program. Can you give me any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. As I said earlier, our office is multifaceted. We don't just represent the city.
Right.
We advise the city council. We handle citizen complaints. And before we leave, I want to hit on the domestic issue. We talked about that earlier.
Right.
People need to understand, once the complaint is filed or your significant other is arrested, you cannot call us and say, I want to drop charges.
I'm glad you said.
Yeah, you don't have any
Right.
control. Now
Right.
that's a violation against the city. And so
Right.
we make those final decisions. And we do understand that sometimes people want to do that, but there's some mechanisms in place to deal with that. The other thing is, one reoccurring issue we've had is public intoxication.
Right.
We have to find the brunt of the problem, and so we see those things a lot. I can't tell people whether to drink or not to drink, but
Right.
if you are, you need to stay at home within
Right.
the confines of your home, and definitely not drive.
Right. So again, today my guest was Mr. Maurice Taggart, trial coordinator for the Office of City Attorney, and our city attorney is Althea Haddon.
Althea Haddon Scott.
And she has been the city attorney for how long?
Since 2009.
Okay. Well, I want to thank you for coming on our show, Mr. Taggart, and just let you know you've just been placed on alert.
Thank you. If any of your listeners, if they want to contact us, they can reach us at 870-730-2009, or you can come down to City Hall, downtown, 200 East 8th Street, Suite 203. We are open from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We take lunch from 12 until 1. And so if you have any issues, instead of, as Mr. Elliott said, instead of taking it into your own hands, come down and see us and let us take a look at your file and see if there's something that we can do to help you.
Outstanding.